Okay, just a verification. I'm seeing a couple students here with us. Can you see my whiteboard, my kind of paint background, or are you seeing me personally?
The whiteboard.
Okay, great. That's
Me
what
too.
All right. Well, welcome. We are in Physics 1405, and we are going to be talking about the bungee jumping lab this week, right? Is that the same page everyone's on?
Yes.
Okay, great. Do you guys have any questions that you want to start off with?
Not really.
Okay, I'm still navigating to our course page on the side, so I will log into that and check what questions have been coming through in the help form. And if there's nothing too much outstanding there, we will at least talk about the conservation of energy concepts in the lab questions.
There's a question. It says, are there units for the distance traveled? I'm looking it over and I'm not seeing any units on the gray scale. And I agree with that.
Okay, that was the last week's lab that's already due, right? Or is that, oh, do you know what? Bungee jumping might be next week.
Yeah, next
No,
week.
that's 3.
Okay, sorry. Because we didn't have a lab turn in last week, we've been discussing these same concerns for the whole week. So I'm getting a little bit disoriented. Okay, so yes, my recollection, which I'm not logged into it right now, but that scale, it doesn't have any explicit units, but when it displays your velocity, it gives it to you in meters a second, which implies that the units are meters.
Okay, got it.
And I will write that onto the question that was on the board there, just so everyone has that to refer to. Okay, so you guys have already logged into the discussion board. Are there any more questions?
Yes.
Okay. So my recollection of this lab, and I think that we have mentioned a couple of these concepts already, the errors that people make are getting the wrong number on top and on bottom of your fractions. Remember, just when you do the algebra, sometimes the red's on the top, sometimes the blue's on the top, and sometimes people just don't notice that, even though like in the text of the lab, it's fairly careful to explain that all to you. So sometimes people get them flipped. And that's pretty easy to catch. If the lab says compare this number and this number, they're supposed to be the same, and you flipped one of them, you can figure out really quick that you flipped it and that you need to go back and double check the calculations that you made. But sometimes people don't, I don't know, they don't follow. So they turn in something that didn't get checked. Okay. So, oh, and the other question about the actual calculating the ratio, I think that the English there, that they call it a ratio, sometimes makes people think that they can just leave it in fraction form. We don't ever do that in physics. So if you are making a calculation and it does say to calculate it, which you put in your calculator, you get one number out. And that's what makes it possible, because you have a ratio of distances and a ratio of masses. And you can't tell if they're the same or not unless you actually get one number for each. And then you can tell if those numbers are basically the same. And that's one other point that sometimes people look, and if they're just a tiny bit different, they're like, oh, momentum wasn't conserved. And that's kind of a laboratory concept. When you're making measurements in the lab, you will see that sometimes your numbers differ a little bit, and that's called scientific error. It doesn't mean that there was a mistake. We like to keep our scientific error and our human mistakes. They're two different things. But there always will be small variations in the numbers that you're measuring. So if you're comparing like a 3.01 and a 2.99, those numbers are substantially the same. And it's a little bit trickier to tell, sorry, in simulations, but in the actual lab, you make a judgment of how precise your measurement is. And if you're off by that much, you're allowed to call it the same. Okay, so comments on that?
So in this case, is like, okay. So in this case, like number 4 and 3.8 is kind of same.
Yeah, and normally
Aren't you saying?
we wouldn't
Yeah.
like it to differ by that much, but the problem that we
Yeah.
had with the zooming in and
Okay.
out, like you're supposed to be
Yeah.
able to drag the scale so you can see to like the nearest hundredth or something of unit how far it went. And so far people are saying they can't do that. So that means that you're just guessing to the nearest tenth and you might be off by 1 or 2 tenths. So if you're off by 1 or 2 tenths, then 3.8 and 4 are the same number,
Okay.
right? So yeah,
Thank you.
that's totally okay. And that's not ideal, but just given this lab and the fact that the Zoom stopped working, some of the labs were working on Flash and Flash stopped being supported. So there might be just little differences in the simulations compared to what happened in the past.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, let me see. All right, so yeah, we had a question that we already answered about reporting ratios. Make sure that you actually calculate and don't give me a fraction. And then I will comment on the units. And those really, this lab, most students do not find it too long or difficult or involved. So just little things like that, make sure that you read the lab carefully and follow the directions. And if you do, most people come out with a pretty good score and a pretty good understanding of the concepts.
Okay. Actually, I have this kind of personal question. Actually, yeah, you didn't grade lab second yet, so I'm kind of afraid.
Oh,
yeah, how my
okay. Yeah, sorry about that.
So
yeah,
that's why I cannot submit it yet.
I can get on that. I should be able to do that before the end of the day tomorrow. But what happened is I did get started on those and I got through like half the class. And then I just missed a beat because we didn't have a lab last week. And so I've been concentrating on my other sections, but sorry, apologize for that. Any anxiety?
It's like, yeah, my work is gonna be okay or not. So,
yeah,
because it's my actually I'm in group with another classmate, but we both is kind of not easy in English, so that's why we're kind of
Okay. Yeah. So my apologies on that. I do usually try to get the labs graded before the next lab is due, and normally that's only 1 week. And then because the lab was delayed a little bit, that's kind of stretched out this time. But I can take care of you guys on that and get that going again.
Thanks anyway.
Yeah. No worries. Anyone else? Any thoughts or concerns on this? I'm suspecting, once you get going on it, there's very few hang-ups. It's not a lab that's too tricky for most of us. So
the answer, I kind of personally think the answer is not that tricky, but I'm not pretty sure my explanation is kind of the right track on the right track. So that's my concern about the grade.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is that more on lab 2 that you want your score, or lab 3 that do you want to discuss a little bit more what you're thinking for the questions, or?
Actually, I haven't started next one yet.
Okay. Yeah. That's fine. All right. So any other questions on the lab or grading or anything else that anybody's concerned about?
I did have one question. I just wanted to double check that I was making this right. Sorry. I just wanted to make sure that because when in the instructions, when it says just to pause it once the blocks come to like a distance, are we supposed to let them like kind of come to a stop on their own? Or are we just supposed to hit pause and then we take the measurement from there?
Yeah, I think you have to push pause. I think that they'll just go right off the edge of the screen if you don't.
Okay.
So basically it's at any point in time, the distance traveled is directly proportional to the velocity. And so the distances are just it's a way of comparing the relative velocity of the two objects. You don't have the velocity, but the distances are the same, like because it's the same amount of time. So if you push go and you push stop, wherever they are, they've traveled the same amount of time as each other. So the ratio of the distances would be the same as the ratio of the velocities.
Okay, thank
That's
you.
why you do that. No worries. Okay, so also one note, because I do give you guys participation credit for this, but the record I have after the meeting ends is the chat. So that question that you just asked and just any other physics questions that you asked while we were in this meeting, make sure you type that into the chat real quick, and then I will have a record of that with your name on it, and I can give you guys some credit and participation points for that. And then I'll give you guys a moment to do that. So anything you ask, make sure that you write it down so there's a written record of it. And then if there's no other questions, we will just call this meeting done for now. I will probably post the video because I did give you guys a few pointers on the lab, and then I will respond to the discussion board question about units. And that's about where we are, I think. Any other ongoing questions or concerns? Okay, and then I will look, make sure we got everything. Okay, all right, great guys. I will go ahead and end this meeting for now and let you guys go. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.